Purim celebrations while the computer's going live. Let's start off with discussing, first of all, for many people, especially the young at heart, the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Purim, what would you say comes to your mind when you think of Purim? Fancy dress, Hamantaschen, what else? Huh? Freedom, okay. Gragers, okay, we said Hamantaschen, Nacham al Hamantaschen. Okay. What about Purim al-Chaim? Purim. So we got a lot going on here. It's the day we get dressed up. What do you dress up as? Who's dressing up? Who's the astronaut? When you think of Purim, what would you say comes to your mind when you think of Purim? Oh, I'm hearing myself again. How do you like that? Dress. Okay, let's turn that off. Freedom, okay. Okay, done. See? Now you know you're actually recorded. You hear it. It's just it's delayed on the YouTube a few minutes later than we were discussing it here. Okay, with that in mind, let's think about all the wonderful things and aspects of Purim. I think what you mentioned actually about freedom, Isabel, is very important because just as we celebrated, the original Purim was celebrating Jewish freedom from tyranny. Well, today again, we know that there have been people, there have been regimes who've been threatening the existence and the well-being of the Jewish people. And so at the moment, Israel is fighting a battle for our survival. And hopefully they will be victorious and we'll have no more battles because I think we're sick of war. We don't want war anymore. And that's what we pray for the day when wars will be over. There'll be nothing. Hey, how do you like it? And there'll be nothing to cry about or fight about. And please God, that's what we look forward to. So with that in mind, let's talk about where did this come from even that we get dressed up on Purim? It's not one of the mitzvahs of Purim. In fact, I'm going to read to you the mitzvahs now in the Shulchan Aruch. We're going to look at the laws of Purim. Actually, I want to go back into the Megillah and look at it in the Megillah itself where it tells us about the laws and the mitzvahs of Purim so we can know what we got to do. Because dressing up, while that's very nice and you should be young and have fun, and just because we don't get to celebrate Halloween because it's a pagan holiday, so at least we do get Purim celebrations. But what the Megillah gives us is an encapsulation of the four main practices of Purim, which you can see on the screen right here, where the Megillah tells you that how do you celebrate Purim? Well, it's actually towards the end of the Megillah. Let's look at it inside. It's chapter 9, verse 19 through 23, and then again, verse 28. What does it say? That the Jewish people, depending where you live, so it says that the villagers who live in open towns make the 14th day of the month of Adar a day of joy and feasting and a festive day and of sending portions to one another. So without going into all the details that it mentions here, it says explicitly, how do you celebrate Purim? Well, right here, it tells you that you have to hear the Megillah, we read the story, and we send food gifts to each other. Why do we send food gifts to each other? Well, perhaps as many times throughout our history, we were disparate, we were separated, in fact, that was Haman's claim about the Jewish people, not only that we're a fifth column, but as a people, we are scattered and split, faribbled, not getting along with each other. And so to mend this, Mordechai and Esther instituted to foster good relations, friendships. So we send gifts to each other. But it's not enough to send just to your friends. Take care of the less fortunate, the destitute in the community. So we give to the poor as well. And of course, as all Jewish holidays, they tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. So we're going to have a feast. I call it the 4 M's, actually. I forgot to put it in this set of slides. Why the 4 M's? You got Monty. No, not Monty. You got Molly. No, not Molly. We got a lot of M's here. But let's go with the 4 mitzvahs, M's. We got Megillah. Okay, so here's the Megillah. I want to give an open invitation. So whoever wants to join me this evening, you are welcome to come to my home. I'm not going to be there long because I've been booked to read Megillah in no less than 5 places tonight. Yes. And then tomorrow, I've also got a bunch of places between retirement homes and offices and places. So that's why I said we're not going to have a Oiske party. We'll have a nice party tomorrow. But it'll be an hour to 90 minutes, the ganze Zach. So also for yourself, you're not going to sit here all day. We're not going to keep you waiting. All right, but if you do want to come tonight to my shul, 6:15 will be Mincha, and we'll read the Megillah at 5 to 7. So if anybody wants to come to my shul, you could do that. And that's the story. Okay, so we got the the Megillah. We got the Mishloach Manot, which is gifts to your friends. We got the feast, call that a meal, and Matanot Levyonim. So 4 M's of Purim. Now here we have it in the Megillah. Now I'm going to give it to you in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law. It says, Chayav Adam Likros HaMegillah. One is obligated to read the Megillah Balayla. It's not enough to hear it tonight. So if you come to my shul tonight or go to any other shul tonight and hear the Megillah, that's not enough, my friends. You have to read it again during the day. Tomorrow morning we have a Shacharis Minyan, 6:15. If you want to come join us for Shacharit, 6:15. Otherwise, if you like to sleep in a little bit, then you could get a later minyan. Torah Academy has 8 o'clock. I'm sure the yeshiva will have a 9 or 10. So there'll be later minyans available. Or guess what? You could come here and we'll have a Megillah for you at 11. Okay, and it says as well, when is the mitzvah to read the Megillah at night? You could read it all night, but that's not enough. You have to read it after daybreak as well. So tomorrow you can read it all day. If you miss the party here during the day, you could come to my party tomorrow evening at my house at 5:30 p.m. But still come to the morning party. Let's continue reading the Shulchan Aruch. It says, Chayev kol adam litin lepachesh shtei matanesh shleneim. Tomorrow you have to give charity to at least 2 poor people. Okay? At least 2 gifts to 2 poor people. And he says, Ein mashane ma'is Purim l'tzedakah acheres. Those entrusted with monies donated in honor of Purim may not transfer towards a different charitable cause. If you are giving, let's say you want to give to the Chev or to Chabad seniors or to any of the other favorite organizations in the community, Purim emphasized that you're giving it to poor people. Chabad seniors counts because we give food parcels. We give out the Shalach Manas gifts that many of you thank you for coming and helping us pack. On that note, anybody wants to pack matzahs, Sharon's coming by now. Thursday is our matzah packing day. And Thursday, we also have Dr. Stern in the house. I want to invite everybody to come. Thursday, we got Dr. Stern giving an amazing talk. And Thursday, you have a chance to pack matzah before Dr. Stern's talk. Between Physio and Dr. Stern, you will have a chance to pack matzah. So you again are, and those matzahs will be given out here at Chabad and to hundreds of seniors throughout the community. So you fulfill your obligation of giving to the poor by giving to Chabad Seniors Club. But what charities won't qualify? Your shul is not a charity that qualifies. Okay, your shul, as much as we have to build our shul and we're renovating our shul, and it's very important. I would appreciate gifts to our shul, but that's not the point of the Purim gifts. Purim, you give specifically to the poor, is charity, and you give gifts to your friends to create goodwill. All right, so what does it say here? One should be very discerning with Purim money. Whoever stretches, one should not be discerning, excuse me. You better catch me out when I read something wrong. Come on, it's on the screen for a reason. You can't see it, it's small. I know, next time I'll make it bigger. My apologies. I forgot that I'm teaching seniors. My apologies. But can't you see? Yeah. In fact, it's getting blocked a little. I don't even know why it's getting so blocked. Can you guys not see this? You know, and I'm scared to play with it because if I mess with it, what's going to happen? You're not going to see anything. So at least you see something. But my apologies for that. Good question. Yes, any poor person, it says here very clearly, you should not be discerning. Any person who stretches out their hand, give to them. Okay, let's continue. The Shulchan Aruch continues here. He says, one should add a festive meal on Purim. Su'udas Purim, and this obligation, besuda achas yotzim. You fulfill your obligation with 1 meal. Now that's good for me because lately I've been on a thing because I've become so fat. And I'm told to be a rabbi, you got to have a boich. But now my boich got too big. So I started doing 1 meal a day. And believe it or not, even with 1 meal a day, I haven't lost an ounce. So yeah, you should see that meal. But today, no meals. Today's just going to be Hamatash. We're fasting today. So it says here that you fulfill the obligation with 1 meal on Purim. So if you come to the Purim party here at 11 o'clock and you enjoy our brai and have nice burgers and chips and whatever other goodies we'll have for you, then guess what? You fulfilled your obligation of having a meal on Purim. Nevertheless, it says, even tonight, you should have more, you should rejoice more and have even more of a meal tonight as well. And tomorrow, because we're busy throughout the day, I got 8 Megillah readings so far that I'm booked to do. Plus shul plus discovery makes it 10. 10 so far, plus the shul in the evening. Okay, 11 that I know of. So because of that, I'm doing the shul one at 5:30. Do as late as possible. If you start your meal, even if you come late to my party tomorrow night, as long as you start your meal before sunset, before it gets dark, I would say even later than sunset, before Shkia, Shkia sunset, before Tzeis, maybe, I don't know, somewhere in between, then you can still say V'alanissim in your benching tomorrow evening. Okay? V'alanissim. V'alamichia is only if you're going to have cookies, but you're going to wash and have a meal, so you're going to bench properly. Okay. What else does it say in Shulchan Aruch here? Chayv l'shlech l'chaver. I think this is a very important mitzvah I want to discuss with you. The idea that we must send your friend foodstuffs. And this is an interesting mitzvah. You don't get it any other holiday, but it's one that Mordechai and Esther instituted for Purim, of sending gifts, shalach manas, to your friends. Why is that so unique? Because the point is, and in fact, it says here, anyone who sends more to his fellow is praiseworthy. What's the whole idea behind that? Like I said, it's about creating camaraderie, friendship. We want that our friendships should be strengthened. And it's so interesting that in Judaism, you have a day where it's a mitzvah to send gifts to your friend, not only to the poor, but also to your friends. Now, if you have to give more to poor to your friends, who should you give to? Now here it says, anyone who sends more to his fellows is praiseworthy, because we want more friendship. But I think in Shulchan Aruch it also says that better to give to the poor than to just indulge more for the wealthy. But either way, we're all going to have the opportunities to do these mitzvahs here. We have shalach manas for you that we're going to give you tomorrow at the party. And we're going to fulfill all these mitzvahs at the party tomorrow. You'll have a chance to do all 4 of these. And this is the way to celebrate Purim, right? Now, what about the dress up? We got to talk about this. Of course, these 4 special mitzvahs of Purim help foster a more festive atmosphere for the holiday. Now, we recall the miracle of the holiday and then celebrate it together in a spirit of joyous generosity. But if you stop for a moment, the question is, what really makes these mitzvahs so special? Because if you come to think about it, every Jewish holiday is accompanied with extra spirit of festivity. But along with that, every Yom Tov is marked by some special mitzvah, right? One that's unique to that holiday and brings immediate associations with it. So let's think now for a moment. If I'm going to play a little game with you, and let's say I show you a sukkah, which holiday do you think it will be? Or a lulav? What if I showed you a menorah? Oh, very good. What if I showed you a latka? Good. What if I showed you fruits and a beautiful seder? Fruit? Tu b'shvat. What if I showed you a matzah? 4 cups of wine. Maror. Okay. What if I showed you cheesecake and ice cream? Any day. Oh, Shavuot, fine. What if I showed you shofar? Okay. You got the point. These aren't just arbitrary symbols, right? These mitzvahs, these symbols represent essential aspects of the holiday as they are festive icons that are mandated by Torah law, how we celebrate each holiday. What about Purim? Now remember that the costumes, the fancy dress, and the grogger. By the way, my first year here, I told my congregants they must come to shul. I said, ladies and gents, you must come to shul on Purim in your costume. I don't want to tell you what people look like in shul that Purim. For those who don't understand South African English, here a costume means your bathing suit. So I learned since then, by the way, many years ago, I was treated out to a massage. I come to the massage parlor and they tell me that I should get into my birthday suit. I said, into what suit? So yes, I've seen it all, eh? Now, when you think about all these mitzvahs, I don't know if that, if that's unique, because these are customs, the Grager. And that reminds me of another interesting thing I want to point out. Since we were talking about Hanukkah and Purim, which are both rabbinic holidays, but notice there's something different about them both. Both of them have something we use with a handle, but on Purim, the handle is at the bottom, and the Grager, the noisemaker, is on the top, right? Whereas on Hanukkah, we spin a dreidel, also has a handle. But the spinner, the handle's on the top and you spin it, right? And I think that shows us the difference between these two holidays. On Hanukkah, it was noticeable overtly that the miracle was coming from above. It's not natural that oil that's meant to last for one day lasts for 8 days. Whereas in the Purim story, the Grager's handle's at the bottom, because everything that happened was within the realm of nature. So it all comes from the bottom. It's an interesting observation that comes to my mind. But either way, when we look at these 4 mitzvahs that we mentioned here, and let's take a closer look at them, none of them actually seem all that unique, right? Aren't they all just slightly souped up versions of stuff we already do? Let's take a look at them in order, as based on our trusty mnemonic of the M's. And let's start. The first one is Mikra Megillah, reading or hearing the Megillah. Yes, we only read Megillah's Esther, this scroll right here, once a year, right? This Megillah, once a year we're going to read it. But is reading from a scroll really all that unusual? We read from the Torah, exactly. We read from the Torah every Monday and Thursday and twice on Shabbos, right? It isn't even only a Megillah reading that's unique that we do. Because you might recall there's a Saturday on our calendar called Tisha B'Av. On that day we read Megillas Eicha, Lamentations. And there's actually 5 Megillas. So Megillas Esther, at least in the Chabad custom, we read 2 of them a year on Shul. Esther on Purim and Eicha, Lamentations on Tisha B'Av. But if you come to our Pesach retreat, which is only 4 weeks away, we have Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, that we read when? You guessed it, on Pesach. And many people on Shavuos. What Megillah do they read on Shavuos? Megillas Rus. Okay, maybe this year we'll do a deeper insight, a deep dive into learning more about Ruth, because we want more Ruths and less ruthlessness. And Ruth is a very powerful story, so I think we'll spend some time this year learning more about Ruth. And what about Kohelet, Ecclesiastes? When do we read Ecclesiastes? On Shavuos. No. No. Sukkot, Shavuos, we read Ruth. Koheles, Ecclesiastes is on Sukkot. Now, to make the matter even more perplexing, my friends, the early halachists have explained the purpose of reading the Megillah on Purim is to serve as a way of offering praise and thanks to God for the miracles that Hashem brought for us. As they put it, reading Megillah works as a stand-in for another prayer that we say on all holidays called Hallel. The reason we don't say Hallel on Sukkot, on Purim, is because it didn't happen in Israel. But Egypt also, no, that answer doesn't work, because Pesach didn't either happen in Israel. I'm going to need another answer for that. That's what somebody told me in shul this morning, but that can't be the reason, okay? So that only makes our problem even bigger, because Hallel is recited actually every Rosh Chodesh and every Yom Tov. And now I'm perplexed. So when are you going to have to give me an answer why we're not reciting Hallel? Because this morning I discussed it with somebody in shul, and he said it's because it didn't happen in Israel. I said, oh, okay, good. And now I'm talking to you, and it dawns on me that Pesach also didn't happen. I have to give it some thought. Okay. Either way, let's read here one of the things about that our sages tell us about the difference between Purim and Hanukkah. And maybe this will explain it to us. It says it's not the recitation of Hallel and Hanukkah alone that is a rabbinic ordinance, but rather at all times, on all the days that the complete Hallel is recited, the obligation to do so is rabbinic. There are 18 days during the year when it is a mitzvah to recite the entire Hallel. Can you think of what those days are? Well, we have 8 days of Sukkot, 8 days of Hanukkah, so we're sitting now already at 16. The first day of Pesach. No, we're in diaspora. So you're always going to have an extra. The halacha starts off in Israel. Okay? All right. So now, actually, this is written, this is from Mishnah Torah Rambam. Okay? But either way, we'll discuss this. It's getting cut off on the screen. My apologies for that. Shavuot also. Okay? So you have 8 days Sukkot, 8 days Chanukah, 1 day Pesach, 1 day Shavuot. Now, of course, Hallel is not recited in Rosh Hashanah. It's not recited in Yom Kippur, so it's not unique that Purim doesn't have it. Okay? Why not? Why don't we recite Hallel on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Anyone know? What? Oh, it says here. Good, you're reading. I'm glad you read too. Good. So the reason is because they are days of repentance and fear. They're not days of celebration per se. Yes, we are already happy and we realize we're going to have a good verdict. But to begin with, it's introspective days, right? Therefore, the sages did not institute for them. But why not on Hillel? Why not Hallel on Purim? Because the reading in the Megillah, says Rambam, serves the purpose of Hallel. So is there anything truly unique about the Megillah reading on Purim if it's just taking the place of Hallel? That's my question here. What makes it unique? So we're going to go a little bit further into the halacha, and we have here Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, who very famously wrote, what did he write? Didn't he write L'Chadodi? I was at his grave, at his burial in Tzfat not so long ago. Please God, going back there soon. Now I got 3 weddings in June to be in Israel for, so please God. Now, says Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, actually, there aren't really any other times when we're specifically enjoined to give food to other people. While that's true, that's unique to Purim, but let's think for a moment about the point of this mitzvah. What does it say in the Megillah? Why do we give out shalach manas? Why are we giving out gifts to our friends on Purim? What's the idea behind it? It's to heighten, as I said before, the idea, the spirit of unity, of camaraderie on this holiday. Says Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, the village dwellers went further than the inhabitants of Shushan in initiating the practice of Mishloach Manas, symbolizing that they had joined together in love and fraternity. The opposite of their oppressor Haman's statement. What did Haman say? He said there's these people who are scattered and divided. Maybe we were. So to counter Haman's claim, what do? We strengthen our unity. So send gifts to your family. Send gifts to your friends. Send gifts to your spouse. Send gifts to your children. Send gifts to whomever you love. Okay? So the whole point about that is to strengthen our brotherhood, our unity, our friendship, our love, our camaraderie. Now, do any of these words ring familiar to our ear? Huh? Of course, right? These are basic elements. Ahavat Yisrael, love your fellow Jew, love your family. It's something you get all the time. Is that unique to Purim? Huh? In fact, we know what does Rabbi Akiva say? To love your fellow as yourself. Zeh Klal Gadol b'Torah is the most basic fundamental principle of the entire Torah. So if it's the most fundamental principle of the whole Torah, then what's so unique about this mitzvah of giving gifts to each other? You always have to love your friends. Okay, we're emphasizing it today, so we'll talk more about that. But I want to even talk about the next one. What about the mitzvah of Matanot Lavyanim, giving gifts to the poor? Is that something that's unique to Purim? No, don't we give tzedakah every day before we pray? So what's unique about Matanos Lavyanim on Purim? Huh? It's mentioned. Oh, so I'm putting it on the screen already. I'm jumping the gun. We actually are doing the regular, but with extra intensity. I want to talk about this. What's unique about Purim? You know, what Jewish holiday would be complete without food? Obviously, when we talk about a meal, every holiday has to have a meal. We always celebrate. But here's the thing. On Purim, we're talking about highlighting, emphasizing, spending more time on these mitzvahs. And that's the thing I want to talk a little bit more about. Why are we emphasizing these mitzvahs more than another time of the year? Yes, every day of the year you could eat food. Yes, every day of the year you could give to the poor. But on Purim we say give at least to 2 poor people. Every day of the year, you could give to one person a gift, and you fulfilled your mitzvah of giving charity. You want to be more generous, gesundheit, but as long as you gave to one person, that's fine. But here we're saying, don't just give. Everything we do more. Whereas on Hanukkah, you just read the Hallel, you recite it once in the day. How many times do you do it on Purim? Both at night and by day, right? While every holiday you could eat a meal, here we say it's a mitzvah to have the meal. And while we said you only have to have one meal, but we're saying you should eat more at night too. And Mishloach Man is giving gifts. It's true. Any time of the year you want to give gifts to your friend, gesundheit, no problem. But here it's a mitzvah to do so. There's no mitzvah any other day of the year to give. And in fact, ask yourself, how often are you giving gifts to friends? Maybe a special occasion, a birthday, an anniversary, you're going to a wedding, you're invited to bat mitzvah. Fine, you're bringing a gift. But do you bring gifts to your friends just out of the ordinary all the time? Now I see a few people shaking yes, so I'm impressed with you. That's a good sign. Very impressive. We're a good crowd here. For those of you watching online, Chabad seniors got it right. It's the way to go. But otherwise, people don't necessarily, most people aren't just giving gifts to their friends. Even the tzedakah, like he said, what do we say in Purim about tzedakah? Kol hapoishet yad, anyone who extends their hand, noisnim, we give to them. So obviously, there's something special, unique about it, because while the other holidays have feasts, here...
Standing before extinction, they say, kill all the Jews there.
Right.
So it was like to finish them all, to destroy this.
Haman's decree was to annihilate every single Jew, man, woman, child, young and old. Every single Jew on that day was supposed to be killed. And what's unique is Haman said only Jews, not by ethnicity per se, but just those who follow the Jewish religion. If you gave up Judaism and converted, I don't know what religion, but whatever paganism that Haman followed, you would be speared. And the miracle was not a single Jew gave up. Not a single Jew did it. Today, unfortunately, we have many Jews who betrayed their religion, right? But not a single Jew gave up their Judaism, which is a unique aspect and element that we're going to emphasize here in our celebration. And that's the thing, is that Purim is unique in that things are definitely supposed to get out of control. Purim, we have to take things to the next level. And it's mandated in halacha. Don't just have a little sip of kedem wine or whatever Jewish benevolent. What do we say? You have to get a little bit you got to get a little bit drunk to the best of your ability. Don't go out of your kishkis. I'm not going to tell you that you have to get intoxicated and crash your car, God forbid. Let me tell you, my father-in-law's yard site is in 2 days, and he was killed a day and a half after Purim by a drunk driver. So my wife's family is on a very big campaign here to encourage people, not that they shouldn't drink, but that they should drink responsibly. Give your keys to somebody if you have a l'chaim. I will tell you that straight up. Order an Uber instead. Go to your Purim party with an Uber instead of drinking yourself, or have a designated driver. Do something that will ensure that you do not get into a compromised place. As a Hatzalah paramedic, I've seen this too often. Unfortunately, I've seen what happens from drinking and driving. So I'm warning, and I know I'm preaching to the choir because you're all well behaved, but you'll tell others as well. While we say that on Purim, you have to go out of your regular state of mind, and we have to go into this state of detached judgment that you don't even know the difference between blessed as Mordechai and cursed as Haman, right? So you go to that state, but do so responsibly. So the mitzvahs of Purim obviously are very different than all other holidays. Everything is turned up to 11, a little more, a little extreme, a little bit crazier, right? Which only makes us wonder, why? What's so unique about Purim? So our starting presumption was that every holiday has its own set of unique practices. And what we came to discuss was that it seems like on Purim, it's not necessarily unique. It's 4 mitzvahs of Purim. Megillah, which is substituting challah. It is the meals, which you have every holiday, but eat more, drink more. It is Mishloach Manot, gifts to your friends, which you could do any day. But in this holiday, give at least 2 gifts to at least 2 people. Everything's doubled, everything's more, everything's extreme. Charity. Every day we give charity. But on Purim, extra charity. Whoever extends the hand, give to them. So now we have to understand what is this about Purim, that we don't just celebrate like any other holiday, but we do so on steroids. We do it even more so. And in order to understand why we commemorate what we do, we have to understand just what it is that we're commemorating. And as it turns out, the real focus of our Purim celebration has a lot less to do with the historic events of Purim miracle, the story that happened back then, which is happening again now. But let's talk about it. In part, the revised understanding of Purim depends on a reassessment of all Jewish holidays. And I'm going to get to a verse in the Megillah that's at the very end of the Megillah, so most of us usually ignore it because even myself, while I usually practice the Megillah from the beginning, what happens this year? I forget to practice the end. So this year I'm going backwards, even though the Baal Shem Tov said, you mustn't read the Megillah backwards. If you look at it as an ancient story that happened long ago, you haven't fulfilled your obligation. But to practice, I guess you're allowed to do it in any order. That doesn't make a difference. Chassidus, of course, tells us, we learn that every Jewish holiday is expressive of a much deeper, more spiritual reality. Every year on the anniversary of the original event, those spiritual realities, those energies, the themes, the concepts, whatever you want to call them, they come to the fore, they blossom, and they find a new expression. Starting on Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to start talking about Pesach again. And every year I do my model Seder with you. Each year I have hopefully some new ideas and insights. But the main vart I say to you year after year is that the same energy that was present in the Exodus back then to break free from Egypt is the same energy that's available for us to tap into today to break free from our own Egypt, from our own slavery, our habits, and our addictions. That's what every holiday celebrates, not just what happened then. In fact, there's no word in Hebrew for history. The modern Hebrew word historia is actually an English word that's just Hebrewized. The Hebrew word is zikaron. Zikaron means a memory. And a memory you have me. And history you have just his story. But a memory, it's my story, it's our story. And what's happening again each year after year, the irony that this year the Iran war happens right here, right now. And this is the same thing relevant Purim too. We aren't just commemorating Mordechai and Esther and all the characters in the Megillah and all the plot lines and the sum of their parts. This isn't just an exercise in nostalgia. It is much deeper. There's an aspect of the Purim story that emerged from all those elements, and it remains relevant ever since. Who wants to tell these guys to shush the machinery till 12 o'clock? Anyone? So in some ways, my friends, it's the reason the miracle occurred in the first place. Like I say on Pesach, that day is a day of the miracle. And then every year we celebrate a much deeper understanding and appreciation of the miracle that happened then. But it's because that very day itself has the energy and the potential for the miracles. So what is it that we're celebrating? And here's a very interesting story that the Gemara tells us. The Gemara has a story the Gemara tells us about the uniqueness of Purim, and the sages tell us that this is something that goes back in history. So let's read it. Says the Gemara, "V'adif yom Purim ki yom shnenitna b'Torah." The day of Purim is as great as the day on which the Torah was given. So now we're connecting Purim to Shavuos. Or you could say to Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur, when we got the second set of tablets. And I'm going to explain that both. The day of Purim, meaning not just the historic once-off event of Purim that happened back then, but every year as we celebrate it on the 14th and 15th of Adar, is as great as Shavuot, the day that we celebrate the God's gift to the Jewish people called the Torah. As impressive as this is, it seems very different. Like Shavuos, we know it's a few months away. That's the day God gave us the Torah, centuries before the Jews ever got to Persia. So what's the connection to Purim? What is it about the Exodus or say Rosh Hashanah? What's so unique about it? Yes. No, it's long more than a month after Purim. It's 7 weeks after Pesach, which means Shavuos is 11 weeks away from today, from tomorrow. Okay? 11 weeks away. So we have to understand what's the connection. So let's go back into the Gemara. Says the Gemara here that a very interesting connection. The verse says that the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai under the mountain. So one of the great sages, Rabbi Abdimi ben Hama ben Chassa, said, this teaches that the Holy One, blessed be He, overturned the mountain upon them like an inverted cask and said to the Jewish people, if you accept the Torah, all is well. If not, Sham Tehek Voraschem, there should be a burial under this mountain. Rav Acha ben Yaakov observed, this furnishes a strong protest against the Torah. Said Rabbah, yet even so, they reaccepted it in the days of Achashverosh, as it's written, the Jews confirmed and took upon themselves. Here in the Megillah, we're going to read this verse later today, this evening when we read the Megillah. It says, Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim aleim. The Jews accepted upon themselves. Says the Gemara, what did they accept upon themselves? Talmud says they accepted the Torah. But didn't they accept the Torah already at Mount Sinai? What's going on here? This whole story seems like there's a mobster's proposition. God's saying, accept the Torah or I'll bury you under this mountain. What's happening? Did the Jews accept the Torah under duress? How does that make any sense? Why would God threaten his chosen people? Why would God tell them that, he's going to twist their arms? If you don't accept the Torah, I bury you right here under the mountain. What's going on? After all the plagues and the Exodus and the splitting of the sea and everything the Jewish people experienced, the manna in the desert, they willingly declared, Nasav and Ishma, we will do and we will listen to everything God says. So what does it mean? Why does it seem that the Talmud is implying that they were forced into this? So the Talmud discusses this further, and the Talmud says, Kafa alein har kigigis, that they overturned the mountain upon them like a inverted cask. What does this mean? The Talmud asks, why would it be necessary to do so? Says the Gemara, if the Jews said Nasav and Ishma, why would you have to do that? So we have to unpack the story. The whole story of Matan Torah can only be understood in its historical context. After spending 2 centuries in abject Egyptian slavery and enduring the horrific persecution from Pharaoh, and now you have Moshe Rabbeinu Moses, who's the savior of the Jewish people, and he appears on the scene. And then over the next few months, the Egyptian people are brought to their heels, and you have these mind-blowing, miraculous plagues. And the Jews race out of Egypt, and they witness the extraordinary splitting of the sea, and everything else that happened, all the miracles. They had the protection of clouds by day, and a pillar of fire by night, and all this wonderful stuff. And they're whisked off to Mount Sinai and presented with the Torah, which of course they readily accepted. It's a story with all the trappings of a fairy tale, which in a way is precisely the problem, my friends. What's the problem? In today's era, all the things that go on, you would say, maybe it's a Me Too generation, right? There's all kinds of, I want this and I want that, and we like convenient relationships. People, the divorce rate is through the roof these days because everything is about what's comfortable, what's convenient. So when God offers the Jewish people the Torah at Mount Sinai, it seems the Talmud is implying that it was like, would we say no? If somebody did you a favor, you're going to tell them no? So now that God offered them the Torah after everything that they experienced and endured, it would seem to be, not that it's a threat to them per se, but that how could they say no? But it wasn't internalized. It wasn't something they made and took their own. They didn't appreciate it as their own gift, right? So here's the question. Did we not have a choice in accepting the Torah? What's the link with Purim and this curiously problematic notion? So this was Tosafos, and here's what, we're going to read this a little bit further. Whoops, apologies. Where did it go? Play around with my slides. So here's the Alter Rebbe. He says, this is the meaning of the notion that they accepted the Torah at Mount Sinai. 1 second, it says that the battery's going to die. So let me just get the charger out quickly. Hopefully it stays charging. Okay, there we go. Let me go back. All right. The whole idea is that, yes, Hashem offered them the Torah. The question is, did they accept it out of really a passionate way of wanting to accept the Torah? Or did they accept it because, are you going to say no to God? Right? Somebody did you a massive favor. You can't say no to them. I could think of a few times in my life where that's happened. Okay, and I'm sure you can think of those too. So first the Gemara. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, and every word that went forth from mouth of Hashem, blessed be he, the souls of Israel departed, for it said, my soul went forth when he spoke. If their souls departed at the first word, asks Rabbi Yeshua Levi, how could they receive the second word? So he answers, God brought down the dew with which he will resurrect the dead, and God revived them. So again, we find this seemingly, enigmatic idea. First, we saw the threat of burial if they don't accept the Torah. And now we see they actually died when they heard the commandments. Again, this is Talmudic insights. So whether it literally happened or figuratively happened, the fact that the Talmud mentions this is all relevant. In both cases, the point is to convey this uncontainable magnitude of the spiritual moment. And in mystical terms, we're going to see here, as the Alter Rebbe says, which we're going to read right now, the godly revelation at Sinai was so great that their souls left their bodies to become subsumed in divinity. And this is what he says. This is the meaning of the notion that every word their souls departed, on account of each commandment spoken by God and the attendant revelation from above. Their souls flew into a state of surrender. So what is going on here? There was like a communing with the divine, because that's what it means to be presented with the Torah, this, God's book. It's an overwhelming experience. It was too much for them to bear, as you can understand. So I guess it's like this irresistible beer hug, you call it. The Jews couldn't simply back off or look the other way. God offers them an opportunity to maintain this tremendous connection with him through the Torah, and they jumped and accepted it. They said, Nasa v'nishma, we accept everything. Now, there are times we accept things, and then afterwards we look at ourselves and go, oh my gosh, what did I just do? It doesn't say anywhere that the Jews did that, but the Talmud is intimating that. And this is because it seemed so overwhelming. Maybe that's why they died each time. Whoa, this is just too much for us to handle. Maybe. And this brings us back to this tricky concept, this idea, the consent of accepting the Torah at that stage. When you realize that you really had no say in the matter. When I tell my kid they have to do something, and they tell me no. Ooh. Okay, I'm not the tough one at home. Not maybe sometimes, could be. I won't go into what happens. What happens at home stays at home. All right. Yeah. But my point is, if they could say no, would they have said no? I don't know. I'm not saying they would have said no, but they didn't have time to think it through. In fact, we see very clearly that they didn't think it through. The Torah says they immediately answered enthusiastically, Nasa v'nishma, we accept it, we'll do it. This is the thing, that if they said it and accepted it so strongly, did they really internalize its message? So let's read a bit further here. He says here, this then is the meaning of our sage's statement. This furnishes a strong protest against the Torah. In other words, the feeling that stirred in their hearts to accept the Torah with such sacrifice and surrender that they declared will do and will obey was not entirely a result of their own choice and desire. It was an account of the revelation of God's love from on high that inspired them. Now I understand God inspired them to accept the Torah. That's great. But did we ever really accept the Torah mitzvahs in a real way? Was it foisted upon us? Were we forced? Were we put into a corner? No, my friends. That's why you can't go to lunch yet, because it's a fast day. And now we're going to talk about where Purim comes in. Now, before we said the greatness of Purim is when we connect it to Shavuos and Yom Kippur. Why Shavuos and Yom Kippur? Shavuos is when we received the Torah. But remember, did those tablets last? No, 40 days later, what happened? The Jews sinned, they betrayed God with the golden calf. Now you'll see the connection of Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and Purim. So we have to understand this really well, because when they received the second tablets, they really received the Torah up again. And they received it in a more internalized way. And this is what we see again in the Megillah, when they recommitted the commitment to the Torah. We see this fit all right through when they sealed the deal. So when was the deal properly sealed? The Talmud says on Purim. But how could that be? How is it that Purim, it's a long time, it's almost a millennia, almost 1,000 years. Okay, so first we could say it happened on Shavuot, on Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur and Purim are interconnected. But let's look at it. Purim has a whole lot less significance in a way than Shavuos. Because without Shavuos, you would never have Purim, you would never have Hanukkah, you would never have all the other holidays. But of course, we have to understand it's all connected. And you go to Thursday's Shir, you'll understand that even more so, how it's all connected. Not this Thursday, other Thursdays. So sometimes when a structure is left unadorned, stripped away of any fussy, knickknacks and elaborate accoutrements, its true power and elegance can shine forth. And this is what happened way back then on the first Purim in Persia. You see, once again, context is useful in understanding this historical moment. So let's go back into the Megillah for a moment. The Purim story, my friends, is best understood as an inflection point. And perhaps the most pivotal point in Jewish history since the Exodus, actually. After the first temple, what happened to the Jews? They were dispersed. 10 of the tribes were scattered and lost. The main Jewish community lived where? In Babylonia, okay? And there was a false start return to the Holy Land. Things were starting to look like there was no hope. 70 years passed, and the prophet said after 70 years they would go back to Jerusalem, rebuild the temple. And again, there was one of those miscalculations. How do you count the 70 years, right? But in fact, when you read at the beginning of the Megillah, we read the story of Achashverosh's banquet. What was he celebrating? You know what Achashverosh was celebrating? He was celebrating that the Jews didn't get to go back to Israel. He was celebrating that he kept the spoils that were looted when they conquered Jerusalem and confiscated all of the loot, what's the word? What do you call it in English? Babiza, The accoutrements is the design, but I'm talking about come on, I've said this word 100 times in the last few days, and now it's skipping my head. But the stuff that they stole from the temple, basically. There's a word for it, when people rob and they take things. Anyways, now the Jews settled in Persia, which was part of the Babylonian Empire. And they were living relatively well. They were even invited to Achashverosh's party. So forget about going back to Israel. This is our new Israel. Jews in Germany felt that why do we pray for a foreign country? Why do we pray for Jerusalem, for the welfare of Jerusalem? Let's pray for the welfare of Berlin. Now, mind you, if you live in Johannesburg, you should pray for the well-being of Johannesburg. It's true. But don't forget where's our home, okay? So the thing is, as the light of Israel was already sputtering, and as the Jews were getting comfortable to an exile lifestyle, that's where Haman cast his lots, and the whole story of Purim, his plot presented an extinction level threat to the Jewish people. Even if his plan for virtually instantaneous genocidal slaughter hadn't come to pass, which it didn't, thank God, but the pressure placed on the Jewish people, the assertion that Jewish identity would have been finished, exactly. That was entirely unprecedented. While there were instances where Jews were threatened before, right? I mean, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple, exiled 10 of the tribes, but we still existed. We were still around. But now, all of a sudden, while until then, the Jewish people never faced this kind of uncompromising, murderous anti-Semitism, the first time where socially, politically, physically, the Jews were suddenly worth dirt. They were scorned, they were ignored, they were defenseless. Their lives forfeit. And in fact, Achashverosh, a peculiar personality, instead of abolishing the decree against the Jews, only decrees that they could defend themselves. You can't go back, you can't reverse a decree that's already been made. So the Jews at the time all of a sudden couldn't see anyone riding to their rescue. No light coming over the horizon. And from God, and a far cry from Sinai, there was nothing. It seemed deafening silence. Who was the one telling me the other day? If you think about the white paper that the British people produced in 1939, how damning it was. When you think about it, it wasn't in a vacuum that when the King David Hotel was bombed and the incidents that the Haganah was going into Israel or British Mandate Palestine at the time and wreaking some havoc on the British, what context it was in. The British who had promised us to return to our homeland and all of a sudden reverse course. Just to go historically, it's only 85 years ago. What had happened at the time? What happened here to the plugs came out. Unplug. Just a second, everybody. We don't want to lose everything. So let's just get it back in. Okay. Back on? Okay. The white paper that the British government had passed, basically, this is after the US said no Jews. Canada said no Jews. Cuba said no Jews. All European borders were closed to Jews. South Africa closed its border on Jews. Australia didn't let Jews in. Where were Jews supposed to go, if not for our own homeland? So it's putting into context what had happened at the time. Sorry, this is what happens when you take one movement in the wrong way. All of a sudden, we lose our PowerPoint slide. Ay. I'm going to try to get this back on here for everybody. Play from current slide. Okay. Let's see if it behaves now. So it's in that context that we're talking here now, in the face of all this. Who would want to be Jewish in such a difficult time? Why would a person want to be a Jew if what it means to be a Jew means you're facing the scorn, you're facing Haman's annihilation, you're facing all that? Why would anybody want to be part of such a people? And keep in mind that Haman hadn't developed the biological conception of his Nazi ears. Right? He wanted to kill the people who acted and identified as Jews. And in fact, the Nazis took it a step further than Haman. Because Haman said only if you remain overtly Jewish. The Nazis went further and said, no, even if you're not Jewish, just you have a Jewish ancestry. Yeah. Right? So what would you do if you lived in that climate? And in fact, you remember our talks about the Spanish Inquisition. Many Jews in Spain and Portugal converted to Christianity. Many of those who converted to Christianity hid as Jews clandestinely. They were called Marranos. But would you walk with a yarmulke in the streets? Would you go to shul on Shabbos and send your kids to Jewish school when you know that they're coming to kill you? But the Jews of Persia, think about it. They would have to be mad to hitch their wagon to a horse that's heading off a cliff. And yet, they had the option. They could take off the yarmulkes. They could dress like Persians. They could speak the language. They could adopt the customs. They could do whatever it takes to hide their Judaism or accept paganism. And they would have been spared, right? If there was ever a time to jump the Jewish ship, that was it. And yet, is that what happened? No. Purim, at the darkest moment in Jewish history, stands in stark contrast to the spectacular scenes of Matan Torah. At Sinai, the Jews had no reason to reject the Torah, right? Think about it. God offered them the Torah. It was all good. They just received so many blessings. Manna from heaven, splitting of the sea, clouds of glory, pillars of fire, all the plagues, all the wonderful stuff. There's no reason to leave Judaism then. So it makes sense. But look in the Purim story, not only did the Jews of Persia and beyond remain loyal to their people and faith, but they did so proudly and openly. Mordechai, the Talmud tells us, he even made public gatherings for prayer and Torah study, defying Haman in order to thwart his scheme. And this is something that's discussed. The Alter Rebbe tells us in Torah Or, in total defiance of all the expectations, in the utter absence of any thunderous voices from above or an almighty display of divine power, the Purim story was nevertheless an occasion for a national collective embrace of Jewish faith. In this, it runs parallel to the events at Sinai while remaining their polar opposite. Says the Alter Rebbe, at Sinai, it was hard to say that the Jews really chose God and the Torah. It was something that was imposed on them from above, right? Like Sleeping Beauty. They had no say in the matter. But at Purim, my friends, it was all them. The choice to stick with Judaism came entirely from within, from the depths of the Jewish soul. And here's something the Alter Rebbe flashes out the differences between these two types of events at Mount Sinai versus the story of Purim. Let's continue reading his words. He says, notwithstanding all the challenges, the Jews accepted the Torah completely, willingly in the days of Achashverosh. They performed a collective act of self-sacrifice on their own, totally unprompted by any supernal initiation in the form of a divine embrace. After all, it was a time of spiritual concealment. Therefore, it was an organic, collective spiritual awakening from below. This is the meaning of what it says in the Talmud, that they accepted the Torah completely, willingly. And Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, Mount Sinai, they declared, we will do and we will obey, and their souls expired every time God spoke. This indicates the state of self-nullification, bittul, the sacrifice they achieved, which made them worthy of the godly revelation of Matan Torah. Anyways, I'm not going to read the whole text, it's long, but I think the message is clear to us, that it was at that moment in history that the Jewish people discovered something important about themselves. Until then, being a Jew seemed like something they'd never really chosen. It was, that's who I am, right? This is the family I belong to. They never had made a choice on their own. The Torah remained heterogeneous. It was an external system of law and morality. Yeah, they swore allegiance to it. But now they realized that being a Torah Jew was on a matter of autonomy. It was their own choice. Absolutely. It didn't come from elsewhere. It came from themselves. In the absence of any external factors, they declared, and I would say with enthusiastically, their consent with every fiber of their being. And this is the meaning, what it says, Kimu Mashakiblu. The Jews accepted upon themselves what they already accepted at Mount Sinai. But this time, it wasn't from the glitz and glamour, the impression, instead of love showering down on them from the Sinai, from the heavens at Sinai, they discovered their own spiritual reservoir deep inside, and a powerful love that surged from below. And so this is something they were choosing for themselves because they really wanted it. And out of some mysterious urge that they seem to have possessed all along, but how else could anyone explain their continued subscription to this riskful religion? You know, anytime people want to convert to Judaism, I look at them, I say, you Meshuggah? You know what it means to be a Jew? You know what kind of anti-Semitism and hate we get? You could be a philo-Semite, you could like Jews, you could go to shul on Friday night or Shabbos or whenever there's a nice bracha, and all is lekka. But you want to take it on? You want to know what it means to become a Jew? And the Jewish people realized this was who they really were and what they really wanted. Their connection with God ran deeper than they ever imagined. And so if Shavuos, my friends, marks the day that the Torah was given in the passive voice, then I would say Purim is the day that we accepted the Torah upon ourselves. We realized that we had never really properly accepted it before, right? This is something now that we want to do. This is who we really are. You know the story I tell every year, Shavuos, fits in right here. You guys remember the story of the young princess who was being raised in the palace with every delicate way. And the king says now he's extending his daughter's arm in marriage to whichever prince would be worthy. And every prince who came, the king interviews them. They say, well, we need to see the princess. We got to see if there's attraction. The king says, no. She's my princess. She's my daughter. I tell you she's beautiful. I tell you she's intelligent. I tell you she's charming. Everyone says, you tell me. But, unless I get to see her, I ain't marrying somebody who I can't see. Comes along one prince one day and says, your royal highness, your honor, you say she's beautiful and charming and beautiful and wonderful. I accept. I'll marry her. Wonderful. The prince marries the princess, and they have a wonderful, beautiful wedding. 6 months later, the prince throws a party. We call that party Simchas Torah. So the king asks, what's the party about? He says, on Shavuos, when I married your daughter, I married her on your word. You told me she's beautiful. You're the king, I believe you. You said she's intelligent and warm and kind and all those wonderful adjectives you ascribed to her. Great. But now I'm throwing a party because I know it's true. That's what we say about Simchas Torah. But here I'm saying the same idea applies to Purim. The whole revolutionary religious awareness that blossomed within the Jewish people throughout the year of the Purim plot, in which they were lying under the sword of Haman and all of his mischievous people who wanted to kill the Jews, and not a single Jew, according to our scriptures, left and abandoned their Judaism. That's revolutionary. That's incredible. That's amazing. And so when we wondered about the purpose that is dedicated to the mitzvahs of Purim, we saw that it's true that the way we fast, right? The way we fast. Today we fast in preparation. Unlike Yom Kippur, where first you feast and then you fast, and this time we fast and then we feast. But the whole point is that everything we do is in a slightly different way from throughout the year. Yes, you give charity every day of the year, but now you give more charity. Yes, we say Hallel on other occasions, but now we're reading a whole Megillah. What's the whole difference? What's the whole point? And the answer is the difference between ordinary religious practice and the Purim way of practice. What's the difference? It's what we just discussed. That while we accepted the Torah before, we were just doing it by rote. We were just doing it as robots. Thank you. But now if you come to think about it, people go to work every day and people come home every day. And it's a chore and it's a religious ritual and they do things, but they don't live it. There's no enthusiasm. There's no excitement. And if you hate cleaning your house, what happens? Okay, you'll clean up when it's a real mess, right? But if you love what you're doing, you're going to go above and beyond. You're going to make it beautiful. After the dishes, you might vacuum this and that, and then the laundry. And you're going to go outside and make sure the car is nice and every room. And if you got big space, you're going to be busy for a while, right? But if you enjoy that kind of thing, you'll keep on going. And I would say the same litmus test probably applies to our religious observance as well. Here's a very interesting teaching that the Rebbe says. The difference between doing something under duress and doing something willingly and consciously is that when someone is being forced, they will only do as much as they have to do, fulfilling their obligation. But when a person acts to their own volition and desire, they don't suffice with simply meeting the obligation. They strive and search for ways to add and enhance the act more than is demanded or their duty. And this is what we can understand from the mitzvahs of Purim. Purim, as we've discussed at length today, is the day we celebrate receiving and truly accepting our Judaism. Right? To commemorate this renewal of our national covenant, we don't do anything by rote. We don't just give charity like on a regular day. We don't just eat and say blessings like on a regular day. After all, it's a renewal. It's not a replacement. So we indicate that our religious observance has been radically transformed. That's what Purim is about, my friends. We fell in love with the Torah again. We go a little crazy about it. We get intoxicated with Torah. And in fact, every year on Purim, the Rebbe held a very long Farbrengen. From 1951 through 1987, the Rebbe's Purim would start around 8, 9 p.m. and would go till daybreak, 9, 10 hours. In 1987, the Rebbe stopped holding these long Farbrengens. He would do more of a Sikha talk on Purim. But the point was, the Rebbe would get drunk and would go out of his regular way on what? In Torah teachings. Don't do the regular. The Rebbe's Purim teachings are unbelievably deep. You can see it on the video screen right out here. And that's the point about Purim. Do things extra. Don't just read it once, read it twice. Instead of our regular charitable giving, we're going to be more generous, right? We're going to give to anyone who sticks out their hand. Don't just have the regular festivities, have more. So come tomorrow, my friends. Let's celebrate more and more and more. That's the whole point of what the Purim celebration is about. Don't just do the ordinary. We have to go extraordinary. And my friends, I think, got a couple of minutes left, but the point is, I think one of the rawest expressions of the Purim spirit is at the Purim feast. Because the other mitzvahs, you do them, yeah, we go the extra mile, give extra charity. But the Purim feast is the time where we're meant to really go out of our space a little bit. In fact, Rambam says, how should you do the Purim feast? Let me put it on here. Rambam says, a person should eat meat and prepare an attractive feast as his means permit, according to your ability. He should drink wine until he becomes intoxicated. Eat, drink, and be merry. Is that a Jewish thing? Get drunk till you pass out? Is that what Allah is saying? So, just as the Purim feast is unlike your regular Kiddush, the regular bracha, it's not your run-of-the-mill party. There's nothing indulgent or mindless about these festivities. Like I said, the Rebbe would get, I would say, intoxicated in spirituality. Okay? Transcendence. Going deeper in your Judaism. When religion and our relationship with God begins to grow stagnant, then what happens? Every mitzvah becomes a schlep. Every mitzvah becomes, let me just get it over and done with. You know what I'm saying? Let's just do it quick. Let me get out of it as quickly as possible. And that's what happens in any relationship that goes sour. What happens in a relationship where, you just become roommates like ships passing in the night? Okay? But instead, you want your relationship, you want to spice it up. Okay? I won't talk about relationships today. I will only talk about our relationship with God and our relationship with our friends, which is why we give Shalach Manas, to improve in that relationship. Shake things up. Don't let the old, shatter that old stale and stifling frame of just perfunctory observance. It can't be that way. We have to reach deep within ourselves, be proud of our identity, throw ourselves, our heart, our soul, our mind with enthusiasm, excitement, delirious abandon, whatever it takes, passion. That's what you need. And that's the point of Purim. Go much further, much deeper. Go out of yourself. Go out of your norm. On Purim, we go all out, okay, above and beyond. First, we reach out to others, and then we go outside ourselves by challenging our old modes of thinking and practice, and by discovering our profound connection to the Torah, and our capacity to transcend those constraints and inhibitions. That's why you drink a little l'chaim. It helps you get out of your state and connect with Hashem and connect with your fellow human beings. And this is the point. So just one or two more texts here. Rambam says that you should be more liberal with your donations and more liberal with your drinking. The point of this all is Purim is the day that we remember that we have to own our Judaism, that we have to go out of the way. It isn't just about the guilt trip that our parents put on us or our grandparents put on us. Okay, Purim is about not worrying about what others are going to think about us. That's why you put on a mask. That's why you dress up. You're going out of your state. Okay? It isn't about the sense of duty or rational decision that you made some time ago. It's something from deep within ourselves, a core part of ourselves that is our passion, our excitement on this day. And that's what we are looking forward to celebrating in a much deeper way as Purim comes about. So my friends, I'm going to let you go celebrate. Of course, before you do so, you're welcome to have some lunch if you're not fasting today. And I'm going to tell you to make sure to be here tomorrow for the Purim party. Make sure to celebrate the best ways possible. And make sure that your Purim is Freilach. All right. Ladies and gents, enjoy. See you all tomorrow. Enjoy bingo. Enjoy lunch. Enjoy art. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. for Purim party. Megillah reading and Brai.